I don't know why she does that now and announces it out loud like that.
She always has, Sandra.
Out loud?
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Sandra Bowden-Lerner. I am on the board of the International Listening Association. Welcome to our exchange, the ILA exchange. I always like to actually open before I even tell you all that. We've done it a little bit, but let's see where you're from, because one of my favorite things about the ILA is that we're from all over the world. Most of us are nice, and it's good to see where we're from. So if you can't see, I am in New Jersey right now, and we're in San Diego and Virginia and Slovenia and Vancouver. Oh, several from Vancouver and upstate New York and Kansas City, Missouri, and India and Maryland and England and Memphis. And welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's so much fun to see you guys. Those of you that are members and that we know each other, it's great to see you. Those of you who are new to the ILA, we are a group of diverse people with diverse interests from all over the world. And what we have in common is that we're interested in listening, and we're interested in advancing the practice and the training and the research of listening. And at the ILA, we come together and support each other in that. And we learn from each other, and we get ideas, and we collaborate with one another. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to connect with me at some point, and I'm happy to tell you more and see if we can get you on board. One of the things that we do is these online events, and the one that you are at today is an ILA exchange, and Sharon-Drew Morgan will be our presenter today. If you don't know, oh, let me give you some technical piece first. You'll notice that the chat has been turned on to only go to me. As a listening organization, we feel that it helps us listen better if we're all focused on the speaker and what's going on in the room. But if you do need to speak to me directly, you can connect with me. The second thing that we do ask, if it's possible, also from a listening standpoint, it's always easier to listen and to communicate with people that we can see. So if you're able to turn your camera on, we really do encourage you to do so. Back to Sharon-Drew Morgan. She's going to be speaking to us today. She's an author of the book called, in addition to several other books, What Did You Really Say What I Think I Heard? She's a trainer, she's a consultant, she's a coach. She's a developer of a systems listening, and she'll correct me when she speaks. And she's inventor of the buying facilitation. So without further ado, welcome Sharon-Drew Morgan, and the screen is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. And I'll tell you all about my background later if we have time. I don't know if we have time. We've got 50 tight minutes. So hi, everyone. My life has been spent figuring out how to unpack the unconscious to give us all conscious choice. I've been doing it for 60 years. And some of my thinking is a little bit different from some of the mainstream thinking, and you might enjoy it, you might not, but we'll see. I had always believed that when it comes to listening, that if I showed up and gave my communication partner my full attention, that I would be able to hear exactly what she or he meant to say. But it turned out I was wrong. It turned out our brains make it almost impossible for us to accurately understand what others mean. In 2012, I heard a very strange exchange between two people that were really intelligent people, and they were not understanding each other at all. It was like two different languages. It was really surprising to me. So I called my agent and said, I want to write a book about the gap between what somebody says and what somebody hears. And she got me a contract with Amicom, put the check in the bank, and then I had to write the book. Went online, there was no research. There was nothing written on the gap between what someone says and what someone hears. I Googled all day, Amazon, Goodreads, everything I could find. There were no articles, nothing on it. So I had to figure it out myself. I eventually wrote a book called What, as Sandra said, and maybe Philip, who's just finished it, can talk a little bit about it at the end. But I had to read 52 books to start thinking about the subject at all. I read about brain circuits and language patterns and voice and systems and biases and brain science and neuroscience. And I learned that my brain made it highly unlikely that I could accurately translate what anybody said. So I became determined, given my life's work, to break down the unconscious so we could have conscious choice. And so we could hear with as little bias as possible. I mean, I'm a trainer and a coach and a consultant, and having any bias, of course, hinders me. I then spent another 3 years writing and having to organize all my thinking and developing ideas about how we can accurately translate what's been said and how to mitigate misunderstanding. So in today's session, I'm going to share some of my findings with you and my thoughts on how brains and our language keep us from actually hearing what people say accurately. And I'm also going to give you a really fun exercise and that'll teach you a way to mitigate it a lot. So today I'm going to discuss how language and our brains cause us to misinterpret and understand and bias, and how to override these brain tendencies and this fun exercise. I know that you're all really knowledgeable, probably even have more knowledge than I do about listening. So I hope that some of my ideas will be helpful and you can use some of them. You're going to see that we actually end up hearing some unknown percent of what was said, because so much of it is a result of our brain making unconscious choices for us that cause us to unwittingly misunderstand and misinterpret. We're more accurate with folks that we know and whose language patterns we're used to. The two main problems are language itself and how our brain receives incoming sounds and words. I'm going to start with language. Words. So basically, when we speak in a run-on sentence. We don't talk like this. We talk like this. It's one sentence. So it gives our brains a lot of work to do to recognize where one word stops and one word starts. And that's what takes babies so long to speak, because they hear one sentence. Memory. Recent studies have found that our brains hold short words in short-term memory for 3 seconds, which means the beginning of sentences or paragraphs, whatever people are speaking, we won't retain after 3 seconds. So that's one of the reasons we don't remember what was said. Time. This was interesting to me. Our social construct requires, at least in America, it's different in other countries, requires that we speak 200 milliseconds after a speaker is finished speaking. The problem is it takes us 600 milliseconds to formulate a response. That means we actually stop listening to begin formulating our response well before the speaker is finished speaking. And our brains sort of fill in the blanks with whatever they want to fill it in. And they don't tell us. So obviously we have no idea what we missed, although it's safe to say we've missed some. The other one is expectations. When we enter a conversation with any kind of expectations, our brain is narrowing our listening to those brain circuits that are listening for that, and we're missing everything else they said. So as coaches, if we've talked to that client or heard that sort of problem before, we tend to bias the conversation, bias our listening according to the expectations. I have a couple of simple techniques for you. I'm sure you do them. I'll just mention them here. Announce to your communication partner that you will not be immediately responding when they're finished speaking, that you're going to wait till they're finished to make sure you've heard it all. Literally wait 3 seconds and then speak. That'll make sure you've heard their full dialogue. This other one, I'm sure you all do. Say at the end, I want to make sure I've heard you accurately. I'd like to tell you what I think I've heard. And please correct me where I'm wrong, so we're both understanding what was said and we're on the same page. Okay. In our exercise, I'm going to show you how to supersede the brain's automatic responses. We'll get there in a bit. Now let's get to the brains, which is a little bit more complex and I think a little more interesting. Of course, I've been studying brains for 60 years. So for me, of course, it's fascinating still. Our brains process approximately 400, and you know some of this, I'm sure, 400 billion bits of information per second. But the brain is only aware, it's all unconscious, of about 2,000 million of these bits and remembers about 500,000. We have 86 million neurons and in our brains and 100 trillion, more than all the stars in the sky, 100 trillion neural connections. None of these connections process meaning. It is all electrochemical, okay? And it's all unconscious. And because there's so much happening, our brain is only paying attention to a tiny percentage of what it experiences, made worse by our confirmation bias, historic assumptions, and the relatively small number of circuits that are translating the incoming signals. We'll get to that in a minute. We think we hear what someone is saying, but in fact, we're only hearing some fraction. We don't know, 90%, 9%, we don't know. But we tend to believe that what our brains tell us we've heard is accurate, when in fact it's not true. The book, This is the Voice, which I've just read and I just adore, says that speech is a connected flow of ever-changing musical pitches determined by the rate of vibrations of the phonating vocal cords, filtered by the changing length and shape of the throat and mouth and lips, interspersed with bursts of noises. Okay, physiologic. All words, all sounds enter our ears as puffs of air, vibrations without meaning, similar to the way color enters our eyes as frequencies that then get translated into color by the rods and cones in our eyes. I mean, the world is gray, and whatever colors we see are a result of the rods and cones in our eyes. Basically, everything we see and hear is an illusion and based on the way our brains translate the incoming vibrations. Our brain then filters these vibrations against our mental models, values, history, experience, makes them into signals that get sent down existing superhighways of meaning to understand what's said in relation to what's already there, what we already have programmed and what we're familiar with, regardless of the intended meaning of the speaker. So we're all translating what's said uniquely and potentially wrong. Sandra, could you put up the slide, please? I'm going to have you take a look at the whole flow of the vibrations in to out. So here's the trajectory of sound, speech, words, as it comes into our ears. I'm going to take you through each element so you can understand how we end up hearing what we hear. Everything that enters is a vibration, a sound wave, which goes immediately to our filters that gets filtered through our mental models, history, beliefs, values, experience, in order to choose the right signals to represent us uniquely. The meaning that emerges from that works with what they call the cue, C-U-E, and I tried to find what the cue means. I couldn't, so we'll just call it the cue, that converts the identified vibrations into signals, which then go to what they call the central executive network. I have it up there as the CEN, which seeks existing circuits that our brain already has used, and are ready to go as part of our superhighway. these circuits, neural pathways, and synapses are considered similar enough to the incoming signals. So the CEN seeks out similar enough circuits. Similar enough. Very difficult. Similar enough. We don't know. We don't know what percentage is similar. This existing circuitry translates the signals into meaning or action, which is the output. Either what we think or what we hear or what we do. That's the output. All signals, whether to hear, to understand, to behave, to think, all signals are translated according to the meaning of the circuits we already have in place. So everything we hear is biased by our history, biased and restricted by our history, okay? It's all some percent accurate or inaccurate. I recently had someone tell me that I mistakenly put the hyphen Sharon-Drew in the wrong place in my name. I put it in the wrong place, and that it really should be Drew-Morgan, that I was wrong with my name because she didn't have a circuit for Sharon-Drew. So she changed my meaning to hers. So from puffs of air to categorization filter to signals to dispatch until that finds similar enough circuits to translate the meaning. And it's all electrochemical with no meaning at all, none, other than what our brains determine it should mean, according to our own biases. All of this occurs in 5/100ths of a second, okay? So obviously we're understanding according to our signals, not what the person said, okay? Here's where it gets even worse, where the signals don't exactly match the circuits that our brain has determined similar enough. Our brains kindly delete whatever doesn't match. So if the circuit's like this and there's this extra, the brain goes, oh, we don't need that, and discards it without telling us. And where there's little holes where there's not a match, the brain says, oh, I think I'll take something from here and shove it in there because it seems to me it should fit. If our communication partner says ABC and we hear ABL, we are adamantly convinced that this person said ABL. And we say, well, you forgot what you said. You said, no, our brain told us wrong. And because they discarded the other, the pieces that didn't belong, we don't know what's missing. So we hear what our brain tells us, which is some degree, some percentage of accurate. Okay, that's why as coaches, it's easier for us to work with people that have similar problems to us or similar problems that we've already worked with for a long time. And people that don't, we don't have circuits for necessarily, okay? So you can take down the slide, Sandra. Thanks a lot. So putting the language and brain elements together, there's a dismal picture. Words aren't recognized as intended, as meant. Words aren't remembered. Responses are formulated before the speaker finishes. We enter with expectations that cause us to narrow the circuitry and our biases, expand our biases. All incoming is interpreted by existing history. Brains discard which doesn't match and arbitrarily fills in blanks. And the worst part is we believe what we think we hear. And we believe it's accurate because we have no way of knowing what we missed or misinterpreted. So obviously, there's a high probability that we may not accurately translate what's been said to us. All right, so before we go into the exercise, which takes about 25 whatever minutes, I'd like to take a few questions if you want to send them to Sandra, if you have, otherwise I'll keep going. Just Sandra, let me know.
Okay, you can chat, send them to chat to me.
Are you getting any or should I keep going?
Yeah, okay. So what does CEN stand for?
It's Central Executive Network. And that is where the signals that have now come in from the queue have been filtered for our subjective history, whatever. It then says, which circuits will translate these signals? Because they're just signals, remember, there's no translation until they get to our circuits. And it's in our circuits that our brain translated what's incoming.
Okay, there is a question of, I'm sorry, where can they get the book? And is that chart part of the book?
I don't know if, I don't remember if the chart, Philip, is the chart per se part of the book? Every single solitary thing in the chart is in the book. The book lays out every single element of that. The book is called What? And it's on my site, didihearyou.com. And Philip will tell you how wonderful it is, right, Philip?
The chart is not in the book per se, but as Sharon-Drew mentioned, all the principles in the chart are explained right there. Wonderful book.
And it's fun too.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions or should I go on?
Yeah, Phil has a question about listening bias.
Yes, Sharon-Drew, I recently finished your book, and talking about the biases that our brains formulate, some of these things that we don't know. Confirmation bias is, I think, one of them that we're very well aware that exists. But I know that I read in What that there are actually many more types of biases. Could you share some of them with us?
Oh, I wish I rehearsed all this. I wish I'd reread the book.
Okay.
There's biases for our beliefs, our bias. So if we have a religious belief, we're going to hear somebody, we have political beliefs. Our beliefs create our biases.
Okay.
So whenever we have any, so if someone's in a marriage that's not male, female, we enter listening to whatever they say with an automatic bias. But all of our biases put with the incoming into that circuit, which automatically translate according to what we think, and it overrides the reality. There are almost 1,000 biases, by the way. I can give you, I think there's a book in the bibliography about biases.
Okay, thank you, Sharon-Drew. I did find it extremely helpful. Thanks again.
So Sharon-Drew, CJ wants to know, how do facial expressions and gestures mix in with the audio?
One of the things that I do on my coaching calls is I have them call in on the phone because I don't want any distraction and I don't want me to represent what I'm seeing versus what I'm hearing. So personally, I will not look at anybody during a coaching session because it distracts me. And sometimes people's facial expressions will be different than what they're saying, what they're meaning, and what I'm hearing. So for me, it's a major distraction. And certainly creates more bias for me. I'm very confused. When I'm in a corporate setting and I am doing a consulting job, especially like if I'm on a board of directors, I will ask them if I can walk around because I can hear better if I walk around. Now you'll see that in the exercise. And I don't look at them because it keeps me concentrated on making sure that I get rid of my biases. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So for me, it's a huge distraction.
So Sharon-Drew, John Backman wants to know what happens neurologically in that magic moment when a dissonant signal gets through our filters and ends up changing them.
So That whole sentence doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What does dissonance mean there? Dissonant according to what? I mean, what does that mean? Our brain doesn't hear it as dissonant. Our brain just hears it, oh, look, that circuit should be interpreting that. So what does dissonant mean?
I can give an example.
All right, can we do it real fast? Because I have a 25-minute exercise and I've got about 27 minutes to go. So
Okay, we can take that offline or do
take it offline, please.
Sure.
Because I'm hearing that you're making assumptions in there that I suspect might be inaccurate. I'm happy to have a chat about that afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, I'd like to go into the exercise now. I developed an exercise that is going to show you the brain that your length, the length that your brain will go through to interpret what it hears according to your own existing circuits rather than what's said. And I'm going to show you how to mitigate any problems. I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs about a new form of question that I actually invented that took me 10 years to develop. And unless you've studied with me, CJ, you might know some of this, you will interpret what I'm saying according to your history, not according to what I'm saying. And it's going to be very obvious to you. You'll see that. Once I've read the couple of paragraphs to you, I'm going to ask you to write down what you've heard. I'll give you the instructions and write down what your brain has told you I said. And then I'm going to do the exercise, and then I'm going to read the exact same thing again, a little boring, sorry. And then you're probably, hopefully going to hear something different. Okay, because I'm going to be putting you into a meta position and it'll supersede your limbic brain where your habitual thinking circuits reside. Okay, all right, so here we go. Years ago, I realized that conventional questions are designed to pull information from responders according to the needs and goals of the asker. Use the chosen words of the asker and the thinking, the assumptions and biases of the asker, okay? Then the responder interprets the questions according to their biases. I wondered if it was possible to enable responders to discover where in their brains their own unconscious data is stored to pull the right criteria they need to make decisions for themselves. And coaches would merely enable them to discover their own answers. I'd already figured out that during decision-making, people seek data from their memory channels in a specific sequence. I suspected a question could do that, but not a conventional question. So I spent 10 years playing with words, brain sequences, criteria, intent, and time to discover a way to extract the right data from the right memory channel and the right sequence, and a way to construct a strict boundary to create limits to thinking, but offer a broad scope of possibility. This new form of question is called a facilitative question that works with systems, stages of criteria-based decision-making, and memory channels, rather than information or the curiosity of the asker. I redirected the intent to helping the other's brain figure out how to discover where their own criteria were stored and match their own beliefs and norms and outcomes. Formulating facilitative questions demands that askers trust responders to discover their own best answers, enable them to get to their own unconscious in a way that facilitates change congruent for their system. Will you please write down what you heard me say? I hope you all have paper and pen so you can write. Let's begin to wrap it down a bit, please. Please, please. Okay, I see most of you emerging. Okay. Now I'm going to give you an exercise. It's an NLP-based exercise that I believe will help you diminish your biases and hear less subjectively. And then I'm going to repeat the same few paragraphs, word for word. All right. So sitting in your chair, close your eyes, please. And remember an uncomfortable phone call in which you were agitated or angry, that the conversation was not a pleasant one at all. And play it back in your head, listening to the words, notice the feelings and your annoyed responses, re-experience any discomfort or annoyance, and go deeply into the re-experience and feel what was going on as it was happening. Without moving, please, open your eyes for just a moment and notice how you and others are sitting, because there's a good chance that you're now either sitting a little bit more forward than you were, that you're a little bit more hunched, that your shoulders might be a little bit more narrowed, that your neck might be a little bit in. And notice where you have tension in your body. Is it in your neck? Mine's always in my neck, in your neck, in your shoulders, in your stomach, in your back. Notice it and spend just a moment feeling that discomfort. Now, close your eyes again, please, and go back to that conversation and re-experience the feelings, the tension again in your body. Make that tension a color. Now, if you can, and this isn't necessary, but if you can, make the color flash or pulse. Then in your mind's eye, move that color. For me, it's a flashing color. It may or may not be for you. Move it up your spine in your mind's eye and have it reach the outer edges of your eyeballs. And have the eyeballs get that color. For me, it's flashing. As soon as you notice the color, the flashing color in your eye, the outer edges of your eyeballs, please stand up. All right, and I'm going to keep you standing for a few minutes, so get comfortable standing, please. Feel the feeling, make it a color. Bring it up your spine to your outer eyeballs. What I'm doing is I'm giving you a new trigger. That's body to mind. Usually we do mind to body, but because your mind is biased, otherwise engaged, unwittingly doing whatever is interpreting, I'm teaching you how to give yourself an override through your physiologic. Okay, now stay standing. Hang on, I got to get back to my my computer just undid everything for me. And I think I better find it back. Just one moment. Okay, now, you from your standing position, still with your eyes closed if you can, listen in now to the conversation again while you're standing. Notice if the heat of the annoyance is gone, if the tension from your body is gone, going, lessened. Notice if you're less attached. Does it sound different? Does it feel different in your body? And please stay standing while I read you the same content that I read about my questions, and we'll see if you heard something different this time. Years ago, I realized that conventional questions are designed to pull information from responders according to the needs and goals of the asker. Use the asker's chosen words and biases. Then the responder interprets the questions according to their biases listening. I wondered if it was possible to enable responders to discover where in their brains their own unconscious data is stored and pull the right criteria they need to make decisions for themselves. And coaches would merely enable them to find their own answers. I'd already figured out that during decision-making, people seek data from their memory channels in a specific sequence. I suspected a question could do that, but not a conventional question. So I spent 10 years playing with words, brain sequences, criteria, intent, and time, and a way to extract the right data from the right memory channel, and a way to construct a strict boundary to create limits to thinking, but offer a broad scope of possibility. I developed a new form of question called a facilitative question that works with systems, stages of criteria based on decision-making, and memory channels rather than information or the curiosity of the asker. I redirected the intent to helping the other's brain figure out how to discover where their own criteria were stored and match their own beliefs and norms and outcomes. Formulating facilitative questions demands that askers trust responders to discover their own best answers and enable them to get into their own unconscious in a way that facilitates change congruent for their system. Okay, now sit down if you don't mind, please, and write down what you thought I said this time, and then we'll look for a moment and see if it's different. While you're writing, and I see some of you are finished and some aren't, I'm going to tell you what I did here. This was a two-part exercise, obviously. Initially, you used your natural listening process of translating what I said through your close enough circuits that your brain automatically sent my words, the incoming signals to. When you stood up, I provided a way for you to override your automatic choices and listen in a meta position from a different part of your brain. And you avoided your historic circuitry and hopefully provided a more accurate interpretation. When I read the data about my facilitative questions the first time, your brain chose close enough circuits to interpret where you didn't have any existing circuits for an accurate translation. When I had you listen to an uncomfortable conversation, your reactions initially were your automatic choices as well. And I offered you a brain override by standing up and listening with a different part of your brain. See, we all live our lives in our comfort zone. In NLP, they call this automatic and unconscious choice our self. They call it self. When you are in self, you listen to my content about facilitative questions through your circuits and the natural translation as per your historic circuitry involving questions. But your historic circuits probably couldn't accurately translate what I said and offered a close enough understanding that was unique to your brain and not a conscious choice made by you. This is how we all end up unwittingly biased what others say to us. We don't do it on purpose. It's our brain's fault. When I had you listen standing up, and Tamsin talked about this in her exchange, the difference between the limbic brain and the prefrontal cortex, I offered you the ability to override your automatic circuit choices with a more expanded view, and you probably heard more of what I said and even more accurately. Most people who go back and listen to the annoying experience standing up experience it with less heat, less judgment, less annoyance. When we get triggered by events, we react unconsciously, automatically, and out of choice from self. I mean, self is a good thing. We can't live our lives without being who we are all the time. That's what self is. It's natural. It operates along a prescribed set of neural pathways that have become unconscious and comfortable superhighways over the years. But these choices from self are restricted, and they're only half of the interaction. It's our personal perspective, and the other's reality is not part of the picture. When we react really strongly, there's a physiologic component, especially on the phone, and a scrunch in the middle or pain in the stress point, like in your neck or stomach or shoulders, occurs when you're having a physiologic reaction. When I had you make a stress point a color and stand up, I took you out of self, out of your limbic brain, Tamsin, and into your prefrontal cortex, into a meta position, what NLP calls observer or witness or coach, to see the whole vantage point, or as much as you can, from a larger perspective and make it conscious. It's not a reactive choice anymore with fewer restrictions. It's a conscious choice. We can't have this from self, because from self, it's protracted. From observer, it's larger and it's meta, and the heat's not there because you're not getting into your stuff. The physiology of self is very different, of observer is very different from self. It's disengaged. So sitting back with your feet on the desk or standing up or walking around disengages you. I have a space in my office here where I walk in circles during coaching calls because I keep myself an observer. When I was doing a lot of work for DuPont, they had teams of people who would walk around on Mondays and Tuesdays. They had different people for each day of the week that would go to the salespeople and move. If they were sitting like this on the phone, they would move them back to put them into observer. Just that alone makes a difference. Okay, it's a simple physiologic way to cause your brain to override your automatic superhighways. I've actually trained this to 100,000 people, and from what I've heard, it works. I get notes still from all the people I've trained. And when I'm working with boards of directors, I ask them, do you mind if I stand up and walk around? Because I'll be able to hear you better. There's not one company anywhere in the world, including Nokia and Bethlehem Steel, it just goes on, and they all say, sure. Sometimes one of them will even come and walk with me. It's fun. Use this whenever you need a new choice, and practice noticing where your tension is in an uncomfortable situation. What I've done is I've given myself different colors. So for my son, it's green. So when I see green, because your brain isn't going to tell you there's a problem. Your brain is happy. It's in self. When you're telling your brain consciously that there's a problem, that's what I am having you put it someplace that'll be obvious for you, because that's just a trigger, a signal for you to do something different. When my sun's goes off in my eyes, I have a choice, and I probably don't want to heat it, and I probably want to still be angry with him or whatever. I have a different color for my friends. Sometimes I'll heat it, sometimes I won't, but with clients, I always heat it. As soon as that color goes off, it's purple. As soon as that color goes off, I go up here and I go, yo, Sharon-Drew, you need a new choice here. And I've said that, I've done this for, I don't know, 30 years. All right, it just is a trigger to it. It's a very simple trigger. Whenever you need a new choice, practice this in your daily lives. Practice the color. For me, it's a pulsing color, and bring it to your eyes. You can disengage this way from an unconscious reaction and listen with minimal subjectivity and more choice. You do this anyway when you're talking to children. You're in observer regularly when you're talking with small children. Okay, so here's techniques that I use. I always listen and observer when it's important to hear accurately. Walk around, stand up, lean back, put your feet up. Tell others you need to do this to hear more accurately. No one will mind, really. Notice whenever you feel anxiety in your spot. That'll be your first indication. For me, it's here. As soon as I feel this, then I do this. And I don't think about it at this point. It's automatic because my brain won't tell me what to do, but my body will help my brain. Okay, I trigger my color, need a new choice. Okay, there. Any questions about this? We have a few minutes for questions, right, Sandy?
If you want to, if it's faster this way, you can just raise your hand and wave. I can spot you out.
All right, because I'm done with my program and I have whatever time is left to answer questions.
Questions, comments? Bill?
Bill? Undo the mute.
Thanks. I found what I found that I remembered standing up and sitting down was that when I was standing up, I remembered more of how the facilitated question was to synchronize what our needs were between the speaker and the listener.
Did anyone else notice the distance between what your natural circuits told you I said and then your override told you? No one. No one noticed. Who's laughing? I don't see anyone now. Who's?
That's me. I'm laughing.
Do you not notice a difference, Jill?
Well, I think part of it was a memory thing that, so because I heard it twice, I picked up on different aspects of it. So the first hearing, I kind of got to the overall, the pinpoint of the facilitative question, and it's the reason for it, what it was doing was to find the part of the brain to bypass the bias of the listener. And so, and then in the second listening, I remembered more pieces of it, some of the background, like, your 10 years of the discovery process. And, but still coming back to that idea of stripping the memory and bias using this specially designed question
Okay.
for more accurate data.
Well, I'm teaching them how to have more accurate choices.
Yeah.
The question helps them discover their answers rather than me using biased questions that get the answers I think I want, which restricts them in what they're hearing.
Right. Yeah.
Anyone else? How about you, Simon? I'm putting you on the spot, honey.
That's risky given that he's off camera. Is there anybody else who has any questions?
No, but he can see me. Simon, you just came on.
Jim Jones has a comment or question, Sharon-Drew?
Drew.
I got
Yeah,
it.
so hi, Sharon-Drew. So that it was interesting. So the thing that I found when you read it the first time, and I'm sure this is totally my bias, is I'm trying to capture this flood of information. So I'm trying to gather all the words. The second time I found myself more trying to say, what was the meaning that you were trying to convey to us? So when you first read it, I was like furiously trying to keep up with you. The second time I was like, okay, so what can I derive the big chunks out of that?
So what happened was you went beyond your unconscious and you went consciously to see what choices you had.
Yeah. And my question, so, and I'm fascinated by this idea of the color. So when you had me revisit that uncomfortable conversation, is sometimes we have color associated with emotion. So, you know, my initial color was I wanted to immediately go to red because that's my color for anger. But then I settled on yellow as a color for caution. It was more of a danger signal. But it sounds like you actually have colors that you key on for different scenarios that lift you out of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So yes, and I did the same thing that you're doing. I chose colors to have specific meanings for me. Because remember, I'm consciously getting my brain to do what my body wants, and I'm telling my brain through my body. Usually we do from our brain first to do our body. But when your brain's otherwise engaged, your brain's not going to stop and go, oh, I'm listening to the wrong thing. Your brain's not going to do that. But I teach my body to tell my brain, and I do have different colors. So I don't have to stop and think, gosh, this is a friend. If I'm really annoyed, I can actually just tell her I'm annoyed and I don't have to shut up. But if it's a client, I can't tell them I'm annoyed. So I've color coded. I actually have like 6 of them that are all color coded that go up and tell me what to do. And I go, oh no, but I go, Sharon-Drew, need a new choice here. That's what I say to myself, need a new choice. And then I look at, and I don't know what the choice is, because all of a sudden I have an expanded field to choose from. Now, there might be 2,000 actual things in that field, and I can see 50 of them. But when I'm in self, I'll see 5. When I'm in self, I'm really restricted to what my brain thinks is a close enough neural pathway. But when I override my brain, there's more. I'm only choosing from my own possibilities because our brains can only interpret what we already have there. Does that mean it's the truth? It does not mean it's the truth. It just means we have expanded choice.
All right, Sharon-Drew. Oh, I think we have a quick question from Jill.
Yeah. So Sharon-Drew, you're talking about color, using color and body awareness to pull yourself into more of a here and now kind of space.
No, I'm overriding my natural biases and going to a different part of my brain.
Okay. And is it possible to use other like idea of sound or any, or
I'm
is it?
doing it fast because we don't have time. Sorry, Jill. Where I do color because it goes into my eyes. I don't have to think about it. It's just this automatic thing, quick. And try it with sound, Jill. Try it with sound.
All right.
So if anybody has any other questions or comments, I'll leave the session on for a couple of minutes after, but I want to thank everybody so much for attending. If you have any questions or comments about the ILA, please feel free to reach out to me. We would love to welcome you. Thank you, Sharon.
Give my email address to whoever needs John. We'll talk later, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sharon-Drew. Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you soon. All. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to ask any of us at this point? Let me stop this.